I'm making a screen share of an application for a headstone or marker. This is one of the most useful forms you will look at when you're doing research for the fallen. There's a lot of information that's been compiled on this form that makes it easier to do the rest of your research. So the application for headstone or marker was something that family members filled out after the war. It happened mostly in 1947 through 1949, and it was an appeal to the government to bring home those fallen who'd been buried overseas. And this was the information that was filled out, and when that was requested, they either brought the body over, or if the body was not recoverable, they were able to put a headstone in its place as a memorial to that person. So they all look, some of them are a little bit different, but they all look pretty much the same. We're starting off here with someone who was a Marine, and the enlistment date is on here. That's often something you don't get anywhere else, or it's harder to find, but it should always be on here. We know this person enlisted on the 2nd of January of 42. This is their serial number. Because they're Marines are volunteers, but the serial number will sometimes in the other services let you know if they were volunteers or if they were drafted. I'll explain that later. We've got the person's name, their date of birth, the date of death, where they're buried, the person who's signed for this, and down here's another signature. Real signature, this probably is his mother who signed for this and when they applied for it. Some of the most useful information is here on the right. What their rank was. U.S. Marine Corps, Private First Class is the rank. That's often somewhere else, but this information here is often the only place you'll find this with any ease. This says he was in Company H. So the Army and the Marine, their divisions were divided into regiments, which were then divided into battalions, which are then divided into companies. A company was around 200 men or so. Sometimes the Marine companies were a little bit bigger than the Army companies, but they were numbered A, B, C, D, which was the 1st battalion, then E, F, G, H, which was the 2nd battalion, then I. There's no J because I and J look too much the same, so it's I, K, L, M. So the last battalion, or the last company in each of those 3 battalions, 1st battalion, 2nd battalion, and 3rd battalion, that would be D, H, and M. Those were called the heavy weapons companies. So they had more heavy weapons, more machine guns than the other companies in the battalion. So this person here in Company H would have been in a heavy weapons battalion. The underlined word there, 7th MAR, that's the regiment he was in. He was in the 7th Marine Division. Excuse me, the 7th Marine Regiment. And then you can see the 1st Marine Division. So sometimes they don't have the division, they'll only have the regiment, but it just takes a simple internet search to type in the regiment, and the regiment will then show which division it was part of. So if you look at the date, anyone that's a World War II buff would know that the 7th Marine Regiment, 1st Marine Division was on Guadalcanal on October 26, 1942. So this individual, Sam Huey Scott, died on Guadalcanal during that famous campaign. So that would be information that you could get for someone that was in the Marines. So let's go to another one of these applications for headstones. So this one is someone that was in the Army Air Forces. He enlisted on 8th of June 1937, very early. He was only 17 at the time because he was born February 8th of 1920. He died on April 5th of 1942. And we've got his serial number here. He was a volunteer. He was from the state of Idaho. The rank he ended up with was Staff Sergeant. And here we see the bomb squadron he was in and the bomb group. So the bomb squadron is a smaller unit, and there were usually 3 or 4, usually 3 bomb squadrons in a bomb group. And the bomb group would be the larger size, and then it went into a bomb wing, and then it was an Air Force. So the 8th Air Force is probably the most famous, and they had bomb wings under that, and then they had groups under that, and then squadrons under that. So you'll probably be able to do the most research on Matthias Donnert if you look up information about the 11th Bomb Group. That's a large enough group of individuals that there may be even a website associated with the 11th Bomb Group. So just from having this application for headstone or marker, that points you in a lot of good directions on where to find additional information. You know the day he died because he was in the Army Air Forces. You may be able to find in the 11th Bomb Group missions by date, and then you could see what missions were there on April 5th, and you may actually be able to find out the actual mission that was the last one for Matthew Donnard. So that's someone that was in the Air Forces with this application for Headstone works. Let's look up somebody who was in the Army. So Bartle Avery, he enlisted on November 10th, 1943. Serial number has an O in front of it. That means he was an officer. So all officers, we say that they're commissioned. They accepted a commission, so they're volunteers. They volunteered to be an officer. You were never drafted to become an officer. We show his date of birth. We know what day he died. And then the useful information to do more research is he's a captain, so he had a pretty high rank. He's in Company A. Often it was a captain that was the head of a company, so he might have even been the captain in charge of Company A. We know he was in the 335th Infantry Regiment. So in this case, they don't show what division that was in. Because he's in Company A, we know he's in the 1st Battalion. This is his regiment. If we were to go to a Google search and type in 335th Infantry Regiment, it would say that it was the 84th Infantry Division. So again, we now have a way to start doing research on what happened to Bartle Avery, because you know when he died and we know what unit he was in. The internet has such wonderful people that have posted great value of information that you may be able to find details on what happened to Bartle Avery around that time of April 6th. So that's an example of someone in the Army, what you can find on an application for Headstone or marker. And here's the last one. I picked one from the Navy. So this individual, David Hall Robertson, Lieutenant Junior Grade, U.S. Navy Reserves. We see service number. We can see his enlistment date. He enlisted like 6 days before Pearl Harbor is what it says. He died on May 23rd of 1944. Here, because it's a Navy one, I guess they're showing some medals. That doesn't appear in all of them. It says he got the Air Medal, which is a medal that flyers can get that's related to heroism, but not necessarily in combat. Here it tells them where he was at. Unfortunately, not all of the Navy records have this level of detail. Some of them only say U.S. Navy, which you kind of wish, gosh, could they put more information? But here they are very helpful. They say he was in Torpedo Squadron 17, or VT-17 was the designation, and he was on the USS Bunker Hill. So you can Google VT-17, USS Bunker Hill. The torpedo squadrons are only assigned to aircraft carriers for a season, then they were rotated out and replaced by another one. So probably the better source for more information about David Robertson would be to look up information on VT-17. But you could put in Bunker Hill to find out what it was doing during that time. We know the day he was born. We know the day he died. All useful information to continue to do further research about this individual. So there are about 80,000 of these applications for headstone markers. And as you know, there's like 400,000 people that died. So unfortunately, we don't have this record for all of the fallen. But that's a good chunk to start with. So if you're new and you don't want to really challenge yourself, but you want to help out, if you start with those that have this application for headstone or marker, you'll be able to get a lot more information a lot faster than if you don't have this information. Anyway, that's what I want to share in this training video. So I hope that helps you, and thanks a lot for helping to write the stories behind the stars.